There's something intoxicating about having everything you've ever wanted. At least, that's what I used to think. Living in our Seattle lakeside mansion, married to one of the city's most successful tech entrepreneurs, I had achieved what most would consider the American dream. James Mitchell wasn't just wealthy, he was brilliant, dedicated, and completely in love with me. For 8 years, I played the role of the perfect wife flawlessly. I hosted charity galas, attended board member dinners, and smiled at all the right moments. I was the woman everyone envied, the one they whispered about at social gatherings. Sarah Mitchell has it all, they'd say. If only they knew how suffocating perfection could be. Don't get me wrong, I loved James, or at least I thought I did when we first met. He was different back then, hungry and driven, building his tech company from the ground up. I watched him transform from an ambitious startup founder into a powerful CEO worth $500 million. But somewhere along the way, something changed. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was the money. Or maybe it was meeting Ryan. I still remember that night at the charity gala in Chicago. James couldn't attend another late meeting with investors. I was used to attending these events alone by then. Ryan Cooper approached me at the bar, his smile confident but not arrogant. "You look like you could use better company," he said, sliding onto the stool next to mine. I should have walked away. Instead, I laughed. "What makes you think my current company isn't satisfactory?" "Because you've been staring at your phone for the past 20 minutes, waiting for a text that isn't coming." He was right, of course. James had promised to call, but I knew he wouldn't. Ryan and I talked for hours that night. He understood me in a way James never had. He saw past the perfect facade I'd built. When he kissed me in the hotel elevator, I didn't stop him. That should have been the end of it, one night of weakness, a secret I'd take to my grave. But Ryan had other plans. He started showing up at every event I attended. Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, somehow, he was always there. Our affair became a dangerous dance of stolen moments and secret meetings. Then Ryan suggested something that would change everything. "I could be your brother," he said one night as we lay in a hotel room in Manhattan. I thought he was joking at first. "What are you talking about?" "Think about it, Sarah. Your husband knows you have a brother you haven't seen in years. One who's been living in Chicago." The plan was insane, but the more Ryan talked, the more sense it made. James knew I had a troubled relationship with my family. I rarely spoke about them, and he never pushed. It was perfect. Too perfect. Getting James to agree wasn't as hard as I expected. I spent weeks laying the groundwork, mentioning my brother in casual conversation. I talked about how Ed lost his job, how he was struggling. James, ever the savior, reacted exactly as I knew he would. "He can stay with us until he gets back on his feet," he said, pulling me close. "You're too good to me," I whispered, feeling only a slight twinge of guilt. The day Ryan moved in, I watched James carefully. My husband was all warmth and welcome, helping Ryan with his bags. If he noticed Ryan's designer watch or the way his beat-up car still purred like a luxury vehicle, he didn't mention it. Living under the same roof as both my husband and my lover was a dangerous thrill. Ryan and I had to be careful, of course. No lingering looks at the dinner table. No late-night encounters in the kitchen. But there were moments, brief touches as we passed in the hallway, secret smiles when James wasn't looking. The risk made everything more exciting. James worked long hours at his company, leaving Ryan and me plenty of time alone. We started small at first. I gave Ryan access to James's home office, where he could gather information about the company. Financial records, business strategies, client lists, everything we needed. Ryan was methodical, patient. He knew exactly what we were looking for. While he gathered intelligence, I started moving money. Small amounts at first, nothing that would raise suspicion. Offshore accounts, untraceable transfers. Each successful transaction made me bolder. I told myself I deserved it. After all, I'd spent 8 years of my life building James's image. I was more than just a wife, I was an investment. But we needed more than just money. We needed control. Ryan's brother Michael, a lawyer with flexible ethics, became our secret weapon. He helped us draft documents that would transfer everything to me when the time was right. The company, the house, the assets, all of it would be mine. We just needed James to sign. That's when fate handed us an unexpected gift. The car accident wasn't part of our plan, but it was perfect. James's temporary blindness gave us the opportunity we needed. I played my part beautifully. The devoted wife, taking care of her injured husband. I handled his business calls, managed his meetings, became his eyes. Ryan stayed in the background, the supportive brother-in-law. No one suspected anything. But something felt different after the accident. James changed. He became quieter, more observant. Sometimes I caught him tilting his head slightly, as if listening intently. Other times, he would reach for things with surprising accuracy for a blind man. Ryan noticed it too. "Are you sure he can't see?" he asked one night. "The doctors said it could take months to recover," I assured him. But doubt had crept in. We started being more careful. No more whispered conversations in the kitchen. No more secret touches when we thought James wasn't around. Still, we had come too far to stop now. The papers were ready. Michael had drafted every T-ing perfectly. All we needed was James's signature. "It's time," Ryan said one morning, after James had been blind for 3 weeks. I knew he was right. We couldn't wait any longer. The longer we waited, the riskier it became. I approached James that afternoon, keeping my voice soft and concerned. "Honey, we need to get you to sign some papers for your medication." He turned his face toward me, those unseeing eyes somehow finding mine. "What papers?" "Just some insurance forms. Nothing important." He nodded slowly. "Whatever you think is best." His trust in me should have made me feel guilty. Instead, it made me feel powerful. Everything was falling into place. Tomorrow, we would take him to Michael's office. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, I would finally be free. As I lay in bed that night, listening to James's steady breathing beside me, I thought about the future. Ryan and I would leave Seattle, start fresh somewhere else. Maybe Europe or South America. Somewhere with no extradition treaty, just in case. We would be rich, free, and together. No more pretending. No more perfect wife. Just me and Ryan, and $500 million. I should have felt excited. Instead, I felt strangely uneasy. Something about James's behavior lately made me nervous. The way he moved around the house with such confidence. The way he seemed to know exactly where Ryan and I were at all times. The way he smiled sometimes, as if he knew something we didn't. But it was too late for doubts now. The plan was in motion. Tomorrow would change everything. I just didn't know how right I was. The morning of our plan dawned cold and gray, typical Seattle weather. I watched James dress himself with practiced ease, his movements too smooth for a blind man. but I pushed the thought away. Ready to go, honey? I kept my voice sweet, caring. Of course, he smiled that strange, knowing smile again. Ryan was waiting by the car, playing his part perfectly. Let me help you, James, he said, taking my husband's arm. The drive to Michael's office was quiet. Too quiet. James sat in the back seat, his face unreadable. I kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror, searching for any sign that he suspected something. But his eyes remained unfocused, staring at nothing. Michael's office was on the 20th floor of a downtown high-rise. Everything about it screamed success and legitimacy. Perfect for what we needed. Right this way, Mr. Mitchell, Michael said, his voice professional and smooth. I watched James carefully as Michael explained the medical forms. He nodded at all the right moments, asked appropriate questions. Everything was going according to plan. Until it wasn't. These seem like a lot of papers for medication authorization, James said suddenly. My heart skipped a beat. It's just standard procedure, Michael replied smoothly. Insurance companies, you know how they are. James nodded again, but something in his expression made my skin crawl. Then he started signing. Page after page, his signature perfect despite his supposed blindness. I exchanged glances with Ryan, who looked as uneasy as I felt. When the last page was signed, I felt triumph surge through me. We had done it. Everything was ours. That's when James looked up, his eyes focusing directly on mine. Not unfocused. Not blind. Looking. Seeing. My blood ran cold. Well, he said, his voice eerily calm, I believe we're done here. Ryan stepped forward, cocky and confident. Yeah, we're done all right. Done with you. I wanted to tell him to shut up, to stop gloating. Something was wrong. Very wrong. James stood slowly, adjusting his suit jacket. You know, Sarah, you really should have been more careful with those offshore transfers. My heart stopped. What? And Ryan, checking my email on my laptop? Amateur move. He turned to Michael, who had gone pale. As for you, Mr. Cooper, the Bar Association will be very interested in our meeting today. You can see, I whispered. For weeks now, James smiled, but it wasn't the smile I knew. You've been watching us, Ryan snarled. Recording us, gathering evidence, James corrected. Every conversation, every secret meeting, every transfer. I felt the room spinning. Why did you let us go through with this? I demanded. I needed everything documented. Every signature, every confession, every betrayal. He walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Sarah? I've already frozen all the accounts. Even the secret ones. With that, he walked out. Ryan exploded into action. We need to leave. Now. I couldn't move. Everything was falling apart. Sarah. Move. Ryan grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the door. We burst out of the office building into the gray Seattle day. Ryan was already planning, talking fast about backup plans and hidden resources. I barely heard him. We reached the curb, Ryan frantically looking for a taxi. That's when I heard the screech of tires. The black SUV seemed to come out of nowhere. I didn't even have time to scream. The impact threw me into darkness. My last thought was of James's smile. That knowing smile. He had one. He had always been winning. I just didn't know it until it was too late. The next thing I remember is pain. blinding, all-consuming pain. Voices shouted around me. Sirens wailed in the distance. I tried to move but couldn't. Through blurry vision, I saw Ryan lying motionless beside me. Too motionless. People gathered around us, their faces shocked and horrified. Someone was calling for an ambulance. Others were taking pictures with their phones. Tomorrow's headlines flashed through my mind. Tech CEO's wife in fatal accident. Failed coup ends in tragedy. James would win twice now. He would have his revenge and his sympathy. The perfect victim. The wronged husband. As my consciousness faded, I thought about all our careful planning. All our schemes and secrets. None of it mattered now. James had outplayed us all. The darkness was closing in. I could hear the ambulance getting closer. But I knew it was too late. For me. For Ryan. For everything we had planned. My last thought before the darkness took me completely was simple. James had never been blind at all. We were the blind ones. Blind to his intelligence. Blind to his patience. Blind to the fact that we never stood a chance. The perfect wife died that day on the Seattle sidewalk. But then again, she had never really existed. She was just another lie. Another performance. Another failure. The last thing I heard was the wail of sirens. Getting closer. Too late. Always too late. The darkness won. And somewhere, in his perfectly controlled world, James Mitchell smiled. Knowing he had won. Knowing he had always been winning. While we played checkers, he had been playing chess. And now, checkmate. They say your life flashes before your eyes when you die. But that's not true. What I saw in those final moments wasn't my life. It was all my mistakes. Every calculated risk that led to this moment. Every wrong turn. Every fatal decision. I saw James's face, not as the trusting husband we'd fooled, but as the master strategist he truly was. The irony wasn't lost on me, even as I felt my life slipping away. We thought we were so clever. So careful. But James had been 10 steps ahead the entire time. The paramedics worked frantically, their voices urgent and professional. Female, mid-30s, severe trauma. BP dropping. We're losing her. I wanted to laugh at their efforts. Didn't they understand? I was already gone. Not just physically. Everything I'd built, every lie I'd crafted, was crumbling around me. As my consciousness faded in and out, I caught glimpses of the chaos around me. Police officers cordoning off the area. Photographers capturing the scene. Curious onlookers with their phones raised. Ryan's body lay still beside me, already covered with a white sheet. He'd died instantly, they said. Maybe he was the lucky one. He didn't have to face what came next. The headlines. The investigations. The truth. I heard someone mention James's name. He was there, standing at the edge of the crowd. Watching. Always watching. His face showed appropriate concern, the perfect expression of a husband in shock. But I knew better now. I saw the satisfaction hidden beneath his mask of grief. He'd orchestrated everything perfectly. The accident would look exactly like what it was, an accident. No one would ever prove otherwise. As my vision dimmed for the final time, I thought about the empire we'd tried to steal. The life we'd tried to take. Now it would all stay with James. Along with the satisfaction of knowing he'd beaten us at our own game. The darkness was almost complete now. The voices around me fainter. More distant. I thought I heard someone call time of death. But it didn't matter anymore. Nothing did. In the end, we'd been playing a game we never understood. Against an opponent we'd severely underestimated. The perfect wife. The scheming lover. The corrupt lawyer. We'd all fallen into James's trap. And he'd won. Completely. Absolutely. Finally. The last thing I felt wasn't pain or regret. It was admiration. For the man who'd outplayed us all. The man I'd underestimated. The man who'd turned our own greed against us. James Mitchell hadn't just beaten us. He'd destroyed us. And he'd done it without ever losing his composure. Without ever showing his hand. Without ever breaking a single law. He'd simply waited. Watched. And won. The darkness took me then. Final and complete. The last act in James's perfect play. The curtain falling on our tragic performance. Game over. The sirens faded away. The voices disappeared. And somewhere above it all, James Mitchell stood. Victorious. Untouchable. Free. While I descended into the darkness. Taking our secrets with me. Our schemes. Our failures. Everything we'd planned. Everything we'd lost. It was over. All of it. The perfect wife was dead. The lover was gone. And James would rise from this stronger than ever. A survivor. A victim turned victor. While we became nothing more than a cautionary tale. A whispered warning in Seattle's elite circles. About the danger of underestimating quiet men. Of mistaking patience for weakness. Of believing your own lies. The darkness was complete now. Absolute. Final. And in that darkness, I finally understood. We never had a chance. Not against James. Not against his brilliant mind. His perfect patience. His flawless execution. The game had been rigged from the start. We just didn't know it. Until now. Until it was too late. Until the very end. The end of everything. The end of me. The end of us. The end. End.